Which part of Israel is occupied Palestine?
All of Israel?
There we go. There we go. There we go. So what you're calling for is the obliteration of the state of Israel, and all of this is just a cover for that. I appreciate your time. Based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II. Did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did.
Britain wasn't bombing civilians.
In today's video, Ben Shapiro is talking to pro-Palestine protesters who came to Oxford to talk about this topic. Let's see how this goes. Probably not so well for the Palestinian protesters. Let's watch.
Your argument was predicated entirely on Hamas. But thousands of Palestinians, including hundreds of minors and children, are being held hostage by Israel without any charge, with well-documentation of abuses, including sexual abuse, which Israel's own human rights organizations have reported. Hamas did not exist for decades after Israel's creation, and they're not in the West Bank. So, if you're going to be arguing about Hamas...
What? Hamas is not in the West Bank? If the PA would have been thrown, for example, who do you think the people in the West Bank would have voted for? Israel or Hamas? Because they did a poll and 44% of the votes went to Hamas. Oh yeah. Crazy, right?
How can we ignore that over 200 Palestinians have been killed, including over 40 children, making it the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank before October 7th? That does not even include the killings happening now, just in 2023. So what justification do you have for that if Israel intends to, quote unquote, go after Hamas, is killing many people, especially children, under the justification of Hamas? So what justification do you have of them targeting the West Bank, even if we were to buy anything you said, which honestly I'm questioning?
Sure. So the casualties that have been incurred in the West Bank are prior to October 7th. Largely, there have been many since October 7th because there have been many conflagrations between the IDF and the Palestinian Authority and Islamic Jihad members in the West Bank. There's significant violence over the course of the early part of this year. There's a breakaway group from the Palestinian Authority. It's called the Lions. The Lions were a small terrorist cell, the Lions Den. They were committing acts of terror in places ranging from Jerusalem to areas of the West Bank. And the IDF was going in and making operational decisions to kill many terrorists in these areas. There are many areas in the West Bank that have been particularly infiltrated by terrorism. That the city of Jenin would be probably the example of the place that has been most infiltrated by terror groups. It's unfortunate, but Hamas is not the only terror group in the region. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is an excellent example of another terrorist group that has wide presence in the West Bank, more so actually than Hamas. There's a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket, obviously, that fell on that Gaza hospital. The entire world then tried to blame on Israel.
There's actually a lot of Hamas in the West Bank. A lot of Hamas in the West Bank. Of course, they take accountability every time they do a terror attack. They said Hamas takes accountability for this terror attack, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, there's Hamas in the West Bank.
Okay, I'm allowed to respond, right? Okay. So, if your entire argument, once again, is predicated on terror groups, what response do you have
Why is she responding from her phone? Can you respond from your heart or your brain?
about the Great March of Return, which is a very well-documented incident where peacefully Palestinian civilians just marched to their own land that they have a right to go and return to, but they were killed, shot at, and murdered in cold blood.
What year are we talking about? Which group are we talking about? I need more specificity.
I'm talking about the Great March of Return.
I know I'm asking for more specificity because I'm unaware of all the details of what you're speaking about.
So the Great March of Return is a well-documented instance where many Palestinians, after a tweet by a Palestinian, encouraged other Palestinians to go march peacefully back to their land.
Which land is theirs? What are we talking about?
We're talking about occupied Palestine.
Are you talking about in proper Israel? Where are we talking about? Like which areas?
We're talking about on the borders of Palestine, and we're also talking about their right to return to Palestine.
There is no right to return. If you're talking about in Palestine, if you're talking about the land that is inside the 67 borders, there is no right of return to Haifa. There's no right of return to Tel Aviv. There's no right of return to West Jerusalem.
So you have to remember that there are many, many, many elders who are older than the state of Israel. You have to remember that Palestine is not a Muslim land. You are equating this to a religious conflict. It's not. When Palestine, before it was occupied...
He never said it was a religious conflict, despite the fact that it is a religious conflict. But what does their age have to do with anything? What does their age have to do with anything? So what? Palestine never existed. And because Palestine never existed, the age of their grandparents and the elders of Palestine does not matter. It's not relevant.
You had Jews, Christians, and Muslims peacefully coexisting. Palestine is not a Muslim homeland. It's a land that existed where many people that are alive to this day are older than the state of Israel.
So are you making the argument that any population of any time, all of their descendants now have a right to go back to the place that their great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers went?
Not great-great-great-grandfather. We have grandmothers.
Okay, grandmothers, grandfathers. Is that the idea that you can walk across the lines of any sovereign state and simply claim the place that you said that you had, even though you never established property rights, and say the Jordanian West Bank, or you abandon this place in Haifa? So your claim is that right now people get to walk across the border of a sovereign nation and simply set up shop in Haifa? This is your claim?
So so even if we were to buy what you're saying, which is obviously not true, I encourage you to Google about the Great March of Return, which was a peaceful resistance against a wrongful occupation of Palestine. Even if you were to buy what you were...
Can you just respond?
Can you just define wrongful occupation? Which part of Palestine is occupied?
You're not answering my question.
I mean, I'd like you to answer mine.
Terror groups. I gave you an example of peaceful resistance.
Yes.
I'll give you an example where people were wrongfully shot at, including children, and you still can't answer about why that's justified.
So, if again,
I keep talking about Hamas and terror groups, and you gave examples of other terror groups, even though I gave you examples of civilians who marched and were shot at. But even now, a few days ago, you had Palestinian people living in Israel proper, which is occupied Palestine, who are being shot at by farmers in their gardens and in their farms. And those people are being able to get away with shooting them with total impunity. So why is it that...
That's not true. Many of those people have been arrested. They're all currently sitting in Israeli jail.
The settler that just shot at a Palestinian
have been arrested.
Was not arrested. I encourage you to look into this.
I did look into this morning. And can I please get one answer before you leave? Because this is an interesting conversation. Which part of Israel is occupied Palestine?
All of Israel?
There we go. There we go. So what you're calling for is the obliteration of the state of Israel, and all of this is just a cover for that. I appreciate your time.
The March of Return was not peaceful at all because it was organized by Hamas, by the way, and they did send balloons filled with fire balloons that flew over the border and pretty much burned entire fields of Israelis. Is that peaceful? They also threw Molotov cocktails at the fence. Is that peaceful? Some people did protest peacefully, but a lot of them didn't. So she's lying.
And now like very cutting shut up.
We all know what she's going to say.
Hi. If Israel is justified in killing civilians because of the acts of terror committed by Hamas, why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did? Because Israel is keeping 13,000 children. It has tried them in military courts. Since the establishment of Israel, 55,000 Palestinian homes have been bulldozed. So why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did if we use your logic?
So I'm going to answer your question, then I'm going to ask you a question if you don't mind. Is that all right? So my answer is that Israel would not be justified in killing Palestinian civilians because of the actions of terrorists. Israel would be justified in attempting to kill terrorists, and civilian casualties are a cost of war. That is just a reality of life. During World War II, there were 70,000 Brits who died during the Blitz bombing, and there were 2 million Germans who died, civilians who died during World War II. And I don't see a lot of monuments in Britain because of the 2 million civilians who died in Germany. The costs of war are brutal, they're terrible, they're horrifying. There's a vast difference in moral scope between deliberately going into a civilian area and murdering everyone you can find and trying to kill a terrorist who is deliberately hiding beneath a civilian area, hiding their rockets in civilian areas, starving their own people. There is a vast difference. Okay, so now I get to ask my question, if you don't mind. So my question is, do you believe that there is a moral difference between Hamas going into, for example, Kfar Aza and murdering entire families, and Israel attempting to target terrorists and accidentally hitting civilians?
Israel is effectively doing the same because Gaza is the most densely populated region in the world. There are 15,000 people per square mile.
So does Hamas get immunity because they're there? So Hamas gets immunity. So
Israel has killed 3,500 children in the past 3 weeks. That's more children. That's more children than have died in conflicts around the world in each of the last 4 years.
So just to be clear, your logic is that if you're a terrorist group located in a densely populated community and you hide behind civilians, you're now immune.
Where are the children meant to go?
So you're immune. Okay. That's
Where
a
are they
violation
meant
of
to
the
go?
Geneva Conventions, but okay. You're now immune. Your logic is that if you're a Hamas terrorist...
Sorry, since 2005, 23 out of every 24 conflict deaths have been Palestinian. I don't see any moral equivalency there. It's clearly unjust what the IDF has been doing to the Palestinians because there's a vast disparity between the number of Palestinians being killed and the number of Israelis.
I mean, I would
The
certainly hope that
disparity
Israel is
huge.
killing more Hamas
This isn't
members.
a conflict. This isn't a conflict. This is one-sided ethnic cleansing.
So, again, I'm just asking you, if based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II, did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did. Many more Germans died than Brits. Based on the numbers, does that mean that Britain was wrong in World War II?
Britain wasn't bombing civilians. There's a clear difference.
You should talk to the people in Dresden, but you can't because they're dead.
There's a clear difference. Well, I agree that war is horrible, but this is not a just war. What Israel is doing is not a just war. There is a difference between fighting the Nazis.
So it is not a just war.
Fighting the Nazis.
It is not a just war when you fight a war against people who murder 1,500 of your civilians and take 233 of them, at last count, captive into tunnels. It is not a just war to obliterate them. Please name a just war.
Israel's been killing civilians for the past 75 years, and there was no headlines about it, and nobody said that the Palestinians were
Israel
justified
does
in
not purposefully kill
retaliating.
Civilians. Palestinian terrorists do.
Israel has not
If
purposefully
Israel
killed
put down its
civilians. Are
guns
you willing
tomorrow,
to stand by that
if
statement?
Israel put down its guns tomorrow, there would be a second Holocaust. If the Palestinians put down their guns tomorrow, there would be a Palestinian state. That is the reality. And let me ask you this.
There would not be a Palestinian settlement.
I'm going to ask you this.
Israel has been built in
Guys, I'm going to attach the full video in the description down below because I do want to support Ben and his efforts. I think he's awesome. So please don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel specifically. And this one I think is on the Oxford channel. Great video. And if any Muslims ever bring up, or any Muslims or anybody in general says that this war is unjust, this is the most just war there is. If something like this would have happened to any other country around the world, the reaction would have been the same or even worse. Israel is being trialed, by the international community for no reason. We are on a different level than other countries. We are allowed to defend ourselves. We are allowed to bring our hostages back, and we are allowed to eliminate the threat. It is what it is. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support me financially, you can do so through Buy Me Coffee or Patreon. Thank you for being a subscriber and a follower. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.